it's not like that song changes anything, but that song can be the theme tune to change.
If I were to say to you, what is the music that made you? What's the first thing that you think of?
The first music that comes to me is my childhood music, which was reggae. I was raised in a reggae household, and it consisted of reggae, and then reggae, because my granddad had a nightclub. So my earliest memories are sitting on the steps watching everybody dancing to ska, and ska was probably the first music I ever heard. It's on the main road that goes into Brixton. And in those big tall houses, they had like 5 or 6 floors. I mean, now they'd be like 10 million each, but the basement floor had a separate entrance, so you could go in through the separate entrance to the basement floor. So then there was a door that kind of locked that away from the rest of the house. So a lot of Jamaicans in those early days, they weren't, these black guys weren't allowed to go into normal nightclubs. Like 5 black guys want to go into a normal nightclub, they're just not getting in. And so they just created their own nightclubs, really, and shebeens, and they sell alcohol and have DJs playing. And my granddad had probably one of the most famous ones. This picture of like Cassius Clay coming in through the door. Bob Marley came, Peter Tosh came, Norman Manley came, who was the president of Jamaica at the time. It's quite a celeb fest. And my granddad, I just remember everything was this kind of etched glass and white tablecloths and really beautifully done. Very dark, minimal lighting, really, a lot of cigarette smoke. Everybody smoked. I still love reggae, lovers rock, and dub, really. I really love dub to this day. Do you really want to hurt me? So in terms of like my earliest memory, it's like ska and reggae and Dennis Brown and Gregor Isaacs, lovers rock, and I was a bit older. And then dancehall, like ju, 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 and all the chatting. Which I kind of then ran away from and tried to find things that I did like, and that led me to indie music and rock and roll. I used to watch Top of the Pops religiously. I was one of those kids that would sit like 1 meter away, back in the day when, televisions, I just remember when televisions went from black and white to colour. That's how old I am. And they had this big, huge bulbous thing behind them, and you had to kind of sit quite close to kind of get it, then kind of focus. And Top of the Pops was my secret invisible friend. I used to watch Top of the Pops every single Thursday at 7. I never missed it. My whole childhood and teenage years, I never missed Top of the Pops until I went to university.
Wow.
And that's where I kind of saw another world. That was my kind of, Alice in Wonderland down the rabbit hole into like, wow, what are these people? What is that Boy George? Is that girl or a boy? And what is, David Bowie wearing? And, all this kind of, I realized there was another world out there of music that I just wasn't seeing in my local community. But I would actually say in terms of the modern sound of Skunk Anansie, it was the first time I heard Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name of. I was like, that's the kind of sound that I wanted to do, and that's the kind of sound. And I remember that kind of light bulb moments, like, this feels like the music that I love, that I want to make. Because also it had politics in it, and all the stuff that I was writing was political. I'm a black girl from Brixton. We went through 2 riots. we were in the forgotten South London town called Brixton, which had no money put into it, which was, you know, during the whole of the Thatcher years, all of the inner city, South London, all of the places that didn't vote for Thatcher basically were just left to rot. At the same time, we were completely brutalised by the police at the time. So, you know, people will say to me, well, why do you have politics in music? It's like, well, because I grew up in Brixton in the 80s. That little Brixton girl is always with me, and that little Brixton girl that was asking questions about why is this so is always going to be there, and that's where a lot of the songs came from. And so I think Rage Against the Machine gave me permission. I was like, well, if they can be successful writing songs about their experience in politics, then so can we. And I remember that record just because it obliterated everything that was happening at the time. I mean, it was the end of cock rock and spandex and big hair, and, you know, which had become so overblown and ridiculous. You know, in England, we had this amazing black metal scene, you know, Iron Maiden and all the kind of mid-country kind of metal black bands. Lemmy, I forgot the name of his band.
Motorhead.
Motorhead, Black Sabbath, you know, all this kind of like, you know, really cool dressed in black, kind of like British sounding metal music, which was amazing. And in America, you had this, you know, Guns N' Roses and all the kind of spandex in their hair and the really exaggerated, you know, incredibly camp music scene. And then Nirvana came along with that record, and if you've in 2 weeks, all of that American Hairspray stuff looked awful. It just looked so dated. And I remember we were all like, yeah, this is our sound, this is our thing now, because we were all, that was us. We were already in the army clothes, and all of our clothes was from secondhand shops in Camden and in Soho. And so that was another watershed moment for us as a band. I remember being, being 15, and I was really into the anti-apartheid kind of groups. I joined lots of groups and demonstrations, and a couple of years later, I was living in a housing co-op when I was like 17, and half of it were Namibians who were being exiled from Namibia because they had a pro-apartheid government, and then Black British and one white guy. And so that was just a hotbed of political activity. There was always a big pot on the fire, and someone was always cooking like chicken wings or meat or something like that. And because there was always a meeting, we were always making banners in the basement and going on demonstrations. And Free Nelson Mandela was a song I remember that really kind of summed up the feeling of a generation. You know, it's like, and I think that's what political song can do sometimes. It's not like that song changes anything, but that song can be the theme tune to change.